readers, it's Lori, and I am so excited because it's almost October 1st. So I have my Halloween earring sets on and out. I have my favorite wine, which is Apothic Dark for this time of year. I have all kinds of books picked out for October, which is my favorite month to celebrate all things creepy and spooky. So all of my TBR in October is going to be devoted to spooky, creepy fall reads, and I can't wait. I have picked a couple of really great things, I think, and I hope you do too, and I can't wait to get started. So here we go. So the first book on my list, I don't know in which order I'll read them, but the first book on my list is called The Invited by Jennifer McMahon. I downloaded this on Libra with one of my credits, and it was a bookseller recommendation. It follows a couple who leaves the city and decides to build a home on a rural piece of property. And they soon discover that this piece of property has a bit of a past. And while they're building this house in a DIY fashion, and they pick things out locally and source different things to put in the house, they discover the history of the Breckenridge women who lived on that property. And there are some things that happen to them that need to be heard. And it looks really creepy. It sounds really creepy. It got a 3.82 on Goodreads. I just had to pop over and look really quickly, which is great. And again, it was a bookseller recommendation. So I love a great haunted house or haunted property mystery. And I think this one will fit the bill for sure. The next one on my list is Someone We Know by Shari Lapena. I recently finished another one of her books called An Uninvited Guest. I loved it. I read it in one day. And I had also read a few years ago The Couple Next Door and liked it. So Someone We Know has a 4.01 Goodreads rating. And it's a story of there's a teenager breaking into houses in the neighborhood. And the synopsis starts with a letter that says, "My son broke into your house recently, and basically here's what he found." So there's a neighborhood full of people who have secrets, and this child is discovering some of them, and it looks like a really twisty-turny psychological thriller. Someone is murdered on the neighborhood street, and The Couple Next Door was also a neighborhood mystery, and so she does a good job of sort of these isolated kinds of plot. So the people are, all of the people that are involved are pretty tightly woven into either a neighborhood or a home. So she's really great at that. And I think I really want to read every book she's ever written. So this will be book number 3 by Shari Lapena. The next one on my list is one that I have a physical copy of, and that's Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna McGuire. This has been on my list for quite a while, and I really am ready to take a look. I think it's a young adult fantasy. It's a kind of a cross between Girl Interrupted and Grimm's Fairy Tale, according to Geek Planet Online, but the ratings on Goodreads are about 3.83, something like that. So I'm going to read this because it's really interesting. Children have always disappeared under the right conditions, slipping through the shadows, under a bed, or at the back of a wardrobe, tumbling down rabbit holes and into old wells and emerging somewhere else. But magical lands have little need for used up miracle children. That's all I'm going to read you. But Shauna McGuire is, she has written some other fantasy series and also has written darker fiction as Mira Grant. And this is the first in the Wayward Children series. So I've heard a lot of people love it. Some people think it's weird. I'm pretty crazy about weird books, so I think it's just up my alley. And it's a short one. It'll be good because I have a lot on my list. So Harvest Home is a book that I have on my Nook, and I read Harvest Home by Thomas Tryon years ago when I was a teenager. I can't remember exactly when, but it was really long time ago. And I got it a few years ago because I wanted to reread it, and I started it and just didn't get to finishing it. It was in the time that I wasn't really able to keep up with reading a lot. But I remember just loving it a lot. And so it's a story of Ned and Beth who moved to this little town that they really fall in love with. And it turns out that it's really old and the traditions are very old and colonial almost. And they start to really suspect that something else is going on in this little hamlet that they thought that they would love living in. And there is something else going on. So I'm going to take a look at this again. I usually reread The Exorcist in October, but I'm going to take a look at this one this year, and it has a 3.83 on Goodreads. And again, this came out in the 80s. No, gosh, probably. Let me see if I can figure out when it was first published. 1973. So I probably read it in the 70s. I remember being a teenager when I read it, so I cannot wait to read it again. The next one on my list, if you saw a recent video about what's on my NetGalley bookshelf, this is the one that popped to the top, and that is The Dead House by Billy O'Callahan. It was published in 2017, and it follows a woman who's been ill and she's recuperating and recovering, so she rents or buys a cottage kind of out in the middle of nowhere and invite some friends over to celebrate and to kind of have a housewarming, I think, event, some kind of a party. And they pull out a Ouija board and they open up a sort of a portal to some spirit or spirits who don't want to leave. I know, sounds really exciting, doesn't it? It's gotten 3.83 Goodreads rating, and that's pretty good for me. And it'll be another NetGalley review that I get to complete, so that is a win-win for me. And then finally, I'm going to see if I can at least start, if not finish, The Stand by Stephen King. It is on my top 9 for 2019, and it is the next in the series of Stephen King novels that I wanted to read in order of publication, and one that I have not ever taken a look at, and I'm not sure why. Maybe because it's over 1,100 pages. But you know, it's on ebook. I read pretty fast, and I have an international flight this month, so I will have a long time on the plane to read. And so this, if I'm ready for this, then this would be a great thing for me to read there and back and see if I can get a good piece of it finished. I have always found that no matter how long Stephen King novels are, I am generally able to continue to finish because they're pretty compelling. I really do like his plots. Not all of his books are my favorites for sure, but I'm usually pretty satisfied, and I'm usually pretty happy to finish, and you know, and I'm really focused on the plot and wanting to know what happens and how it all wraps up. So The Stand has almost 5 stars, 4.84. It's really well loved by a lot of Stephen King readers, and it is a bit of an apocalyptic novel. I don't know a lot about it except that the government has done something and part of the population is wiped out. And I think it's also about the recreation of the structure of government. I'm not really certain, but I remember people telling me that it's very political and it's very intriguing and it's kind of a good thing to read during this time that we find ourselves. We'll see, but it's on my list and I'm excited to get to it. So that's 6 books for me in the month of October, but one of them is pretty long. So we'll see how I do. And I'll, of course, update you toward the end of the month and let you know. I'd love to hear what you're reading during this month of creepy, twisty fall days with lots of horror and lots of intrigue and lots of hopefully cool weather. The only thing I don't have today with me, in addition to my earrings and my favorite wine and a scary movie on the TV after I finish this. The only thing I don't have is cool weather. It is almost 100 degrees here today. And that, even for where I live, is pretty remarkably hot. So bring on the cooler weather, bring on the sweaters, and bring on the nice dark evenings to read really, really scary things. Have a great month of October. Have a great reading time during this time of the year. And as always, I appreciate you joining me. I love your comments and recommendations. Let me know what is on your TBR and let me know if you've read any of these novels as well. And as always, happy, happy reading. Bye.